I think that measles is so rare, it's not something that we think about, but as parents we perhaps lump it in with chicken pox and childhood ailments. You know, we think back and people used to talk about going to parties to deliberately contract these illnesses. Things are very different when it's actually your child going through that. I had chosen not to vaccinate Lola May, or perhaps not put as much thought into it as I should have done. And Lola May went to a birthday party, and several days later it came out that a child who was having that party had measles. And of course the absolute fear came then, knowing that I hadn't vaccinated Lola and knowing that most of those children were vaccinated and they would be safe, but just the waiting game then for Lola to get poorly, which she inevitably did. She started with mild symptoms of a cold. The symptoms got worse. She didn't want to be touched. She didn't want to be in light. She had a terrible ear infection. And I kept going back to the doctors and presenting her, and they said that it was probably a virus. By the 5th day, Lola was extremely poorly. She had a barking, croup-like cough. She was finding it difficult to breathe. She was in agony with her ears, and her temperature was really frighteningly uncontrollable. The onset of the rash doesn't come until later on. The symptoms are similar to that of a very serious flu with an uncontrollable temperature. It wasn't until around the 5th day that the rash came behind her ears, and luckily I met a GP at an out-of-hours surgery who had witnessed measles and was able to diagnose Lola. She was very quickly then rushed to hospital, and the rash spread rapidly over her body in the next 24 hours. When you're looking at a child that's sick and knowing that that's something that you've created, that decision that you made inevitably has caused this to happen to your child, the guilt that you feel is awful. That and the fact that the doctors obviously coming in and saying to me that Lola, if and when she recovered, was going to need to be fully vaccinated anyway, made me just feel terrible. The fact that she was still going to have to be vaccinated, in fact the whole family were going to have to be vaccinated, this thing that I had avoided, this decision that I had avoided was going to happen anyway to all of us, just made it so silly that I hadn't chosen or thought about vaccinations earlier on for Lola May. Her breathing difficulties were getting worse as her time in hospital went on. Doctors talked about pneumonia, about partial deafness or full hearing loss. Her ear was quite obviously perforated by then. She was on IV antibiotics. She was having nebulizers and steroids to keep her airways open and her lungs working. Lola May was left with permanently damaged hearing because of measles and a perforated eardrum which hasn't healed to this day. She still, when she gets poorly now, has times when she's almost profoundly deaf, but luckily in between bouts of illness that improves somewhat. Lola May can't have hearing aids and can't be helped. She just has to struggle. It's affected her speech and language, which has affected her confidence. I think my decision not to vaccinate with Lola May, I kind of thought that if everybody else had done it, I perhaps didn't need to, and that complacency cost us so much as a family.
For more information, visit www.nhs.uk.